Hello, I am Horrorama, and today I have found 4 intriguing stories and experiences that multiple people have posted on various subreddits. But before we begin, I did want to ask you that if you end up enjoying my narrations, then please do consider liking and subscribing, as that really does help the channel a lot. And also, if you have any kind of experience or story that you would like to share and have it be narrated on this channel, then check out the subreddit in the description below. But either way, without any further ado, let's get into the narrations. The first story has been posted by user LK_frustrated. My professor saw a strange rectangle on a mountain road. When I went to college, I befriended a professor of mathematics. He was one of the most intelligent, eloquent, and articulate people that I've ever known. A remarkable family man who married in his 20s with a daughter and a son. He never drank or smoked, never used drugs, never permitted himself to curse, raise his voice, or become aggressive, even in disagreements. He was always in control, always punctual and on time, always organized and very disciplined. And he wore clothing that would not look out of place at the turn of the 20th century, and acted like a true gentleman. I'm just telling you what kind of man he was. Definitely not a crazy man, not a junkie, and no mental illness. I had the pleasure of taking advanced algebra, calculus 1, calculus 2, and differential equations with him. Anyway, we had this STEM club room in the math department where we students hang out to study and chit-chat, and sometimes our professor would join us for help with tutoring, homework, exam study help, and just discussions about various unrelated topics. One time he told us a story about when he saw something strange in the woods. This happened during the 90s, when he was still a teenager. He lived in Quincy, California, at least during that time. And he had a hobby of driving his dad's old beat-up truck all over the Sierra Nevada mountains, just for exploring, and also for hunting animals and gathering wild berries. He liked following old mining roads and seeing where they led. One such time, he was out looking for blackberries to pick. It was getting late, and the sun had set, so he was driving down this narrow road when he saw there was an obstruction in the road. He saw it looked like someone had stretched a giant plastic bag across the road. He thought it might have been construction work or something. As he drove up to what he thought was a plastic bag stretched across the road, he stopped his vehicle within 40 feet of it and noticed it was not a plastic bag. It was some kind of screen or curtain, a 2-dimensional flat shape stretching over the road, perpendicular to it. It was a rectangular shape with the width of the road and about 1.5 times in height. And he saw that it was translucent, almost like some kind of hologram. It was like semi-transparent, because when my professor shined the flashlight through the rectangle, the light penetrated through it, illuminating the road past it, but just barely, like the light only went a foot or two beyond that screen. It was just standing, or maybe floating there, and yet it was not attached to anything. It held its own weight, but it was like weightless at the same time. Its surface was wavy, or rippling, I guess. My professor got out of the car to investigate this strange floating rectangle. He went right up to it, and as he did, it was almost as if it was emitting a vibration or a low humming sound that he could feel in his bones. There was an effect that the closer he got to the rectangle, the stronger the vibration was on the objects around it. And as he got closer to it, he saw the hair on his arms standing up, like there was some kind of energy in the air. And there were dense trees on each side of the road, so he couldn't go around this rectangle in the middle of the road. He went up to the trees and broke off a branch. He then poked the branch into this rectangle and saw subtle ripples going up and down throughout the entire thing from the place where he touched the surface. And he stuck the stick all the way into the rectangle, and there was no resistance. But he didn't see the stick going through to the other side of the rectangle. It was like it disappeared or became invisible. And then he pulled it out. The stick was unchanged. Not knowing what this rectangle was, he went back to his car, continuously looking at the rectangle. He didn't want to risk driving through it, so he drove his car in reverse until the road became wide enough to turn around and head back where he came from. To this day, he still doesn't know what it was. He said it looked like a two-dimensional shape, like a semi-transparent thing stretched across the road, perpendicular to the surface of it. He didn't even know how it was possible for a two-dimensional shape to be floating like that, but he saw it with his own eyes. I don't know if he ever went back there to find out. He didn't continue his story. He didn't even say where exactly this was. This was just when we were chatting in the club room after 6 p.m., doing homework or just, I don't know, resting and eating snacks. And I never got back into contact with him after graduating and moving out of that town. And then the pandemic hit. I don't know, but I suspect that that's one of the things that pushed him to become a professor of mathematics. Seeing a rectangle in the middle of the road, that's not exactly something that happens every day, now is it? The next story is imposed by user BushityBoy_. Animal cry morphs into man screaming for help. I'm writing this post while the incident is still fresh in my mind. It occurred around midnight of Saturday, September 2nd, and each day that goes by, I feel more unsure about what I really heard that night. To preface, this took place in the Olympic Peninsula along the Hood Canal. My girlfriend's parents recently bought a beautiful riverfront property in a rural area, down a private gravel road that has a few other houses here and there. Their property is heavily forested on all sides, though the neighbors' houses are vaguely visible to both the left and right. The night was winding down after watching a movie. Everyone had gone to sleep, while I lay awake, playing on my phone. The windows were open, letting in the pleasant sound of the river bubbling outside. Close to midnight, I started hearing splashing in the river, which startled my dog, but was easily explainable, as an elk or deer or whatever else crossing the river, since the area is very wild. However, after the splashing subsided, I started hearing a repeated animal cry that sounded like a sort of bellow mixed with a scream or yell, I guess. It's hard to remember exactly at this point in time, but it was deep, not like a cougar or fox screaming, and fast in cadence. Definitely odd, but still explainable as an animal. This happened for roughly 10 minutes or so, intermittently with what sounded like a huffing or snorting sound. I was alert at this point, listening and trying to calm my dog down, who was unsettled by the sound as well. As I listened, it started moving closer, at first sounding like it was across the river, but now on the right side of the house. As it moved closer, it transformed into what sounded like a human screaming, "Help!" in the most deranged, unsettling way possible. Like it was screaming help, but couldn't quite formulate the words correctly. It literally gives me goosebumps thinking about it right now. At this point, I was thinking, what the fuck? And woke up my girlfriend. We listened together in silence and rushed to wake up her parents when we both heard a pronounced help in the scream. Both dogs started going ballistic, and the screaming stopped at some point in the commotion, so her parents didn't get a good grasp of the sound. After shining flashlights out the windows, we went downstairs and made sure all the doors and windows were locked. After a sleepless night, we woke up and walked the perimeter of the property and found no signs of animals or humans. I was half expecting to see bloody remains or something with how intense the screams were. I imagine that's what a person being axed would sound like. At this point, I really regret not going outside, armed, to investigate, as I've spent the past 2 days constantly racking my brain trying to figure out exactly what that was. I've looked into every animal sound out there and haven't found a single thing that actually sounds similar to what we heard that night. I'd probably think I imagined the whole thing if my girlfriend hadn't heard it as well. I'd love to hear any thoughts and or similar experiences from anyone else. The next story is posed by user Peppy Spray Pete. I think I woke up to a grey alien in my room last night. I've been up since 5 a.m. and I just can't get this off my mind. So last night I'm sleeping and I'm having a nightmare that I'm in an apartment looking into a kitchen area and the drawers, cabinets and the door to the pantry were all opening, closing and moving by themselves. It was like poltergeist activity. I was scared in the dream, so I began praying, and then my wife, who was in bed next to me, kicked my foot and woke me up because I was clearly distressed and mumbling a lot in my sleep. But here is where things get weird. I jump awake, and feeling relieved to not be having a nightmare anymore, I turn my head towards my wife, who was laying behind me, and I say, "Thanks. I'm really sorry about that. I was having a pretty bad nightmare." But I don't hear any response, so I figure that she's already fallen back to sleep, or might just be so tired that she's still kind of out of it. Then I turn my head back to facing towards the direction I was facing the whole time I was sleeping, and I noticed something in the corner of the room, standing in front of the bedroom door. The room was dark, but its skin still appeared to be like a dark, matte color. It was really thin, had thin legs and long, thin arms, a small, almost childlike torso, a narrow neck, and then a really big, bulbous head with huge black almond-shaped eyes. It looked exactly like a traditional grey alien, but it was slightly transparent. Needless to say, I was shocked, and to be honest, my very first reaction was that I was seeing things because I just woken up. So I rubbed my eyes, and it's still there. Trying not to panic, and still trying to come up with a rational explanation for it, I thought, this must just be dream chemicals still working in my brain. So I sit up slightly and look into the other corner of our bedroom by the closet, expecting to see something there too, but there's nothing. Then I look at the ceiling. Nothing. The floor. Nothing. The other wall. Still nothing. I look back at the corner by the bedroom door, and it's still right there. Standing there, completely still, just staring at me with its huge, jet black eyes, which were shaped like almonds, but appear to wrap just slightly around the side of its head, much, much larger than a human's eyes. And it's still slightly transparent, but I'm seeing it clearly, and only in that one spot too, not anywhere else in the room. Now, because the Texas power grid sucks, I always sleep with a flashlight next to their bed, and after seeing this thing for about a minute and a half, it occurs to me to grab the light. I lean off the bed, reach down and grab the flashlight, and shine it in the corner of the room at this thing. And because it's transparent, it became much less visible when I shined the light on it. I could still see it very clearly, but it was much less visible. Again, in disbelief at what I was seeing, I began slowly scanning the whole room with a flashlight. And again, I see absolutely nothing strange anywhere in the room at all, except for this one thing in the corner by my door. I turn the flashlight off right away, and instantly I can see it super clearly once again, just staring at me. I rub my eyes and squeeze my eyes together tightly, hoping that when I open them, it'd be gone. But it wasn't. So finally, I began truly freaking out internally, and I just began praying out loud. And after about 20 seconds of praying, I literally watched this thing just fade out of existence right in front of me. It was still standing there, dead still, and staring at me the whole time. It just seemed to suddenly begin becoming increasingly transparent until it was just not there anymore, and it was gone. I haven't slept since then. I spent the rest of the night reading random stuff on Reddit to try and distract myself, because the experience shook me up quite a bit. I was wondering if there was anyone else who had experienced something like this. I feel so genuinely weirded out that I just don't know what to do or what to make of it. The next story is imposed by user spinach:OK83. I don't know what the voice was, but I think it kept us safe. Sometime around late 2012 or early 2013, I was a caretaker to my disabled father-in-law while my mother-in-law went to college for her nursing license. I was there 4 to 5 days a week, all day and some midnights. And this was great for me because I could bring my sons, 3 and 4 at a time, with me, no babysitter required. And my husband would pick them up from his mom's when he got out of work if I had to stay the night. One day in particular, the kids had been so exceptionally chaotic, my father-in-law had 2 bathroom accidents back to back, was super agitated, and couldn't stop pacing, which was stressful because he's totally deaf and almost totally blind, so I had to pace with him out of his line of sight, but within arm's reach, just in case. So, when my mother-in-law got home, I was ready to go, right then. I was standing alone in the archway between the kitchen and living room, about to announce that it was time for shoes, when I felt a touch on my shoulder and heard a voice, like it was directly into my ear, saying, "Wait 10 minutes." It was not a voice I'd ever heard, not mine, nor my internal voice. I can't even really explain how the touch and the voice seemed almost identical, not harsh or hurried. They were gentle and soft, but defined. I felt a pressure on my shoulder, but didn't feel a hand. The voice was a soft man's timbre, and I heard it clearly, but I got goosebumps, because when someone speaks into your ear, you expect to feel breath, but I didn't. I actually looked around to see if there was someone near to explain this, like a trick or something, but no. So I, of course, listened to the voice, because what's the harm? I spent 10 minutes catching up on my mother-in-law's day, catch my breath, and leave much less stressed than I would have been. It was a good choice all around. Down the road from my house, there's a trailer park that I pass every day, and as I turn the corner, I see this entire entrance of this trailer park is blocked by more police cars than I could count. Men in handcuffs were being loaded into several of these cars by more men in ATF uniforms, like something you see on a gritty crime drama. I never found out what happened exactly. The local Facebook groups only had questions and no answers, and eventually I stopped looking. But I've never experienced a disembodied voice before or since, and I can't believe it was for nothing. I saw a psychic at an occult fair a couple of years later, and I don't know how much I believe what they said, but I was told that the voice's name was Lewis, and he watches over me, and that I also have an indigenous woman's spirit named Morning Dove nearby who loves me. I'd like to believe it, but I also believed that the psychic really wanted another $20 for 15 extra minutes. The next story is imposed by user, "Wow, now I need a cig." For a little context, I'm 36 female, live in a very southern part of the United States. We'll believe in the Rougarou and other things of that nature. A large portion of my state participates in voodoo and other things like that. Well, for as far back as I can remember, things have always happened to me. For instance, some of my earliest memories is of me and my mom living in a little house. I had my own bathroom, and one morning while getting dressed for school, my mom flew off the handle, accusing me of dumping out all of my shampoo into the tub. I told her no, it wasn't me, and I got punished for lying and pouring out the soap, which I honestly didn't do. From there on, things only got worse. Back in these days, it wasn't abnormal for a 6 or 7-year-old to be home alone for a few hours after school. Well, at least it wasn't for us. Every day after school, I would get off the bus, go inside, and eat a snack that had previously been prepared for me, then play Sonic the Hedgehog. Well, I don't know why, but I ended up just being really scared all the time. So I started not going inside after school, and I would climb up a tree and just wait for my mom to get home. This went on for a few weeks, and things kept happening, and I kept getting in trouble. All of the flour would be dumped out, all of the dish soap would be on the floor in the kitchen, lights would turn on and off by themselves, things would come up missing, and I kept being the one accused. It took a heavy toll on a small child. Finally, one day my mom just said, "Go in your room and pack a bag of the stuff you cannot live without." So I did, and we moved. The next house, things were a little different, but also quite similar. This went on for years. Fast forward to me being 15 or 17. I'd gotten very used to whatever this was being around. This mischievous little ghost. Eventually, my mom caught on, and I stopped being so harassed for the things I wasn't even doing. So now, I'm around 15, and I think I know everything. We were living in a small house on the edge of town. One night, I heard the back door open, close, and someone walking around in the front of the house. So I dart across the room to my mom's room and wake her up. She sits up, and I tell her to be quiet and listen, and sure enough, she hears it too. We lock her door and call 911, thinking someone has broken into our house. The police arrive and we slowly come out of hiding, to find absolutely nothing in the house touched. Absolutely nothing. The only thing out of the ordinary was all of the apples and oranges that had been sitting on the counter had fallen on the floor, and it was absolutely freezing in the living room. So the cops leave and tell us if we hear anything else to call them again. Well, let's fast forward some more. I've been in some pretty risky situations where I know I should be dead, and I honestly believe that this spirit has taken a liking to me and has saved my life on numerous occasions. What do you think? Do you think that spirits can attach themselves to you and maybe even protect you? Is something like that possible? The paranormal truly is a fascinating thing. Dangerously so. Even if you do not believe in such creatures, you have to acknowledge that they are still dangerous. This danger might not manifest itself in the form of a bloodlusted beast or a generation-long curse, but instead in the form of human obsession. I assume everyone listening has heard of the numerous people who in their obsession with the paranormal ended up harming themselves or even others. It is my personal belief that such situations give a certain reality to even the most obscure and ridiculous of legends. But either way, I do hope you enjoyed my narrations. But even if you didn't, I want to wish you a good rest of your day.